Hi everyone, and thanks Sarah for introducing me, and welcome along to our webinar on Google AdWords and how it's changed forever. So firstly, quick introduction. I'm looking at the delegate list. I know some of you are a mix of some existing clients, some prospects, and people who are aware of Sagittarius. So we're going to just very quickly explain a little bit about us for those of you who aren't familiar. At Sagittarius, we work on digital marketing that creates traffic and raving fans, and also e-commerce website and apps that drive and convert more sales, and the services that they look like in reality are those two sides of it. And obviously the left-hand side of the screen is the area which myself and my team here at Sagittarius look after. So the aims of today's webinar are to really sort of understand what's changed with Google AdWords, look at some of the impact of these changes, but then share some tactics of how you can maybe get around these changes and exploit them. As well as that, though, we're going to talk about some alternative digital marketing channels, as well as
Muted. Unmuted.
And then finally, we'll have a chance to answer some questions at the end, as Sarah mentioned, through the questions box. So firstly, before we begin, we're just going to sort of decode a little bit of jargon. Some of you will hopefully be familiar with these, but some others may not. So I just thought it would be helpful just to really quickly run through these. So ad rank, that's the average position of your advert over a period of time. So it might be 1 or 1.5 or 2, the average position in the sort of set of ads that are shown. CTR, click-through rate from impressions to clicks. CPC, cost per click that you've actually paid, not what you've bid on. PLA, product listing ads, used to be Google Shopping. And lastly, serps, search engine results pages. So the whole point of this webinar, really, why care about Google AdWords and the changes and the possible impacts that we've had? Well, when I was preparing, I thought, well, let's pull together some sample data across a basket of different clients that we work with here at Sagittarius, and really just try and examine what proportion of brands and clients' sort of web sessions actually come from paid search, from Google AdWords. And you'll see here some really interesting results, actually. A real a mixture from around about 10 up to 25%. So that's a not insignificant slice of website traffic to really care about, especially if the traffic from Google AdWords has historically converted possibly at a higher than average rate. So it's definitely something we need to be aware of and need to be looking at, and how these changes have impacted on you. So what were the changes? What just happened? Okay, so we're going to just run through a little bit of exactly what happened, just so everyone's on the same page and you're all up to speed with what has occurred. So really, it all started 20th of February. It was a Saturday, I remember it well, and the news first broke via search engine land, who had stumbled across some testing that Google had been doing around the placement of ads in search results. So within sort of 48 hours, that news was spreading far and wide, as people like myself in the industry were spreading it on social media. And then within a few days, we were talking about it on the Sagittarius blog here. So it certainly blew up pretty quickly. What it actually looks like in terms of a change before and after, I just thought I'd show you visually. So this was a typical set of search results for a search term, in this case, I think on Stonehenge tours. Quite relevant given the summer solstice the other day. And the previous sort of set, you'll see here the two ads at the top of the screen highlighted with the orange ad symbol. And then in this case, there were 3 ads on the right. That block on the right-hand side actually carried on further down the page. I've cut this page short to really show you what people would see above the fold, if you like, the top half of the Google search results page. In this case, there's also on the top right, there's some data scraped from the knowledge graph as well. So that's sort of what everyone used to see in Google. The 2 ads at the top there would maybe fluctuate between 1 to 3 different ads appearing in that block there. So what Google changed is they replaced what you just seen with now this, and this is a screenshot taken yesterday, so this is an up-to-date version of the same search, and you can see a really radical change here. Let's just talk through the changes. Firstly, we can see before ads in that top block. And the main impact is they have pushed down the rest of the search results. Now, in this case, we're seeing some local search results with map icons there, but organic search results have also been pushed down. And obviously a great big yawning gap of space of white space on the right-hand side there, with, in this case, nothing appearing there. This is another version of the same search with four ads at the top again. And in this case, we're seeing just the top 2 organic search results. So that's just 2 out of the 10 organic search results on that page, which, given the investment we will make in SEO to really get onto page 1 of organic search, to actually lose one of those spots of which are going to have the most visibility is a really big impact. So in summary, as I've just explained, we've now got these 4 ad slots at the top of the organic search results. There is also another pack of 4 ad slots underneath the organic search results directly at the bottom of the page. General consensus is they're going to be of pretty low value. And the right-hand space isn't always left blank now. It's being used, or we were told it's going to be used, for product listing ads, possibly, and also maybe data scraped for knowledge graph results. Since then, there's been further change. I think, as you can possibly see on the examples there, that the ad color, ad label color, has changed from orange to green, which blends it in even more with organic search. As another change, the character length on the sort of title and the description lines have actually changed and increased, and that's to adapt to that wider format across that main central block of search results. And there are rumours coming through that product listing ads are going to be expanded out to more industries and verticals than they've previously been used for, such as travel and hotels. So at the time, there were many predictions of doom. So let's just run through what a lot of people in the industry were commenting and saying when these changes happened, as to the possible sort of negative impacts it's going to have on AdWords advertisers. Obviously, with just those 4 slots and the right-hand column disappearing, that's only maybe 10 or 11 ad slots gone down to 4 on prime real estate on serps. So there's going to be massive competition to appear in those top 4 slots. That's probably going to lead to bid inflation. If you're not winning those auctions, you're probably going to see a fall in clicks. You may well see that coupled with a fall in ad position, and obviously costs could drive up because the cost per clicks are going to come up from the bid inflation. But then I thought it would be useful to have a look at what some of the actual impacts were, because the harbingers of doom sort of claimed that all of those things were going to happen. But let's see, from some of our own experience with clients, what things did actually happen. So looking over the short term of a month before the change on 20th of February and approximately a month afterwards, I've looked across a range of verticals that I'll share with you now. The first one is a website in the home and garden sector. And you can see from the top graph on this page that their clicks and the average cost per click didn't change hugely. The AdWords change happened sort of slap bang in the middle of this timeline, in the middle of the screen, if you imagine that. So there wasn't a huge difference. The second graph, though, did show some fluctuations in the orange line, their ad position, which did fall a little bit. In the click-through rate, which did improve, and ad position as well. So there was some sort of flux happening around those two metrics. Looking at another sector, family holidays this time, you can see that the change was a bit more pronounced. So again, on the top graph, you can see clicks, and in this case, the average cost per click. And you can see that there was definitely some impact of the change here. The bottom graph shows that they did see a worsening advert rank, ad position, but they managed to get a better click-through rate. So even though they're appearing slightly lower down, it was compensated for by an improved CTR. And the last example is in B2B e-commerce websites, and we can see here that initially a much more dramatic outcome. So initially, a big drop in clicks and an increase in cost per click, although that then settled down over the coming weeks. The bottom graph shows a really significant decrease in the number of impressions for their ads. So they're getting much less visibility. And also that's linked to their average position dropping. Now, this is a really interesting effect, and you can see those two lines on that graph crossing over around the middle time there. So what we're seeing is a fall in ad rank can drastically reduce your visibility in terms of impressions. In summary, though, looking at those three graphs and other clients as well, as with any sort of change of this type, there's always winners and losers. I think what we've seen is that a lot of advertisers are now having to work harder to retain their market share. I think we have also seen that those advertisers who've been optimizing for quality score have probably been protected more than others. Fortunately, that's quality score is a really important metric that we optimize for here at Sagittarius on the accounts we look after. So a lot of our clients weren't impacted too heavily. There's also some possible impact from competitor response, some sort of knee-jerk panic reaction and, ramping up bids because suddenly people are losing visibility. That hasn't been as widespread as it could have been, as people predicted. However, this last point here, there has been some bid inflation, which I'll share with you an example now. This is from a global travel brand, and looking at their data, for the period from the 1st of January up till 19th of February, so the day before this change really took effect, we saw the following metrics. So they were year on year getting about 30% more clicks from their Google AdWords activity up until the change. And that was costing them about 55% more than the same period last year. So they were getting more traffic. And it was costing them proportionally a bit more to get that traffic, but that could well have been because they decided to, pursue some certain terms and sectors more aggressively by increasing their bids. The interesting thing, though, is if we look at the date range from the 20th of February to up till the other day to the 16th of June, so a longer date range, and the period since the AdWords change, we see that actually their clicks year on year have now fallen. So they've swung from a 30% year on year increase to now minus 15%. And what's even worse is the cost per click has gone up now by 150% year on year, compared to being 55% worse year on year up until the AdWords change. And what this tells us, in effect, is they're paying a lot more for less traffic. So there certainly are, and it's worth noting, this is a global travel brand spending a significant amount on AdWords. So it seems like the impacts aren't just confined to smaller advertisers, which again was another rumor going around at the time that this change would favor the larger advertisers. So I think we can also see that really ad rank is key. Small changes in your ad position between position 1 to 4 in that block of 4 ads at the top can really have significant impact. So it's not just a case of getting your ads to appear in the top 4 and you just settle with position 4 would be great. Actually, you really need to maximize that number 1 slot. But this is an effect that we've known about for a long time. Prior to this change, there had been some research done on the impact of different ad positions on click-through rates, and I'll share that with you now. This was published in Search Engine Watch, and what this showed is that even a change of an average ad rank from 1 to 1.5 can have a massive impact on click-through rate. So if you improved your average ad rank from 1.5, so it's fluctuating half the time between 1 and half between 2, if you improve that to solidly appearing at 1, your click-through rate improves threefold. But it also shows that in these days, after position 3, there was very little traffic to be acquired. It really was the long tail of low click-through rate traffic. So yet again, this really does enforce that we need to really target those top ad ranks now more than ever. So what I'm going to share with you now are 5 winning tactics to beat the 4-pack, the 4 ad slot, which now appears. I did try to make it 4 winning tactics to beat the 4-pack, but hey, there were too many good ideas to cut it down to 4. So what I'm going to run through are these are short to medium term tactics to help you adjust for changes and maybe in some cases even exploit the changes at the expense of your competitors. Now, these are all things that you could be implementing tomorrow. They're all short-term actions and all pretty easy to get set up and up and running. So let's run through these 5. Number 1, improve your click-through rate. So obviously it's going to gain you more traffic, but if AdWords sees you've got a better CTR, you will be rewarded with an improved ad rank, and we've seen just how important that is. And the way that you can do that is by creating more engaging adverts, obviously. Now, this is nothing new. It's something we always do in terms of our PPC management for clients. You're regularly looking at which ad text engages best, and then taking the best ones and writing more variations of those whilst you pause for worst performing ones. But now that's even more important than ever. Another tactic to use to improve CTR from your ads would be to maybe experiment with the longer text formats we talked about earlier, and use ad extensions. There's a whole suite of ad extensions available in AdWords, things like site links. So you'll see additional links to other key pages in your website appearing underneath your main advert, and also review stars. So we're partners with FIFO, and obviously some of our clients work with other platforms like Trustpilot, and you can feed your average review rating for your brand through into your ads. Now that can really help improve your click-through rate, because if you think about it, those orange stars showing in the search results, it's just human nature. They're going to attract the eye, and the theory is that they're going to attract a greater proportion of the clicks from that audience. So the second point, optimize for quality score. As the slide says, really, we should all be doing this anyway. We certainly manage our accounts in this way. If you're not aware, quality score is a score given out of 10 for each keyword that you're bidding on. And a higher quality score can result in a lower bid, a lower cost per click for the same ad rank, or you could pay the same cost per click and get an improved ad rank. And the way to achieve it is really what I call the relevance trail. You need to make sure there's real relevance between your search term, your advert text, and your landing page on your website, so that they're really granular in nature and really broken down, targeting individual priority search terms on an individual basis. But also, to improve your quality score, you want to filter out the rubbish, really. Delete the poor performing and low quality score phrases, and that will lift your overall quality score. Next point, remarketing. And anyone who works with us will know that we're big fans of remarketing here at Sagittarius. Again, if you're not aware, it allows you to continue marketing to visitors that you have gained through pay-per-click. And I think if it's going to be tougher to gain traffic through AdWords, and it's maybe going to cost you more, it makes it even more important to be doing remarketing to those visitors that you do gain. So, there's lots of ways to do it. A simple way would be to create a custom audience in Google Analytics, where the source of that audience is paid traffic, or CPC, as analytics used to call it. And then run different types of remarketing campaigns. The best one to run would be an RLSA, a remarketing list for search ads. And that will show your ads when users return to Google to search again. And because it's a very specific audience of people, only people who've been to your website, you can get really aggressive with your bidding, target broad phrases, and also competitor names. So you reach people when they're going back to Google and doing their research on other brands and competitors. You can build out other audiences and campaigns based on the source of those audiences. And you can also obviously run display campaigns with banner advertising across the Google Display Network to your remarketing audiences as well. Number 4 out of 5, review and refine your targeting, really. So this is all about, really, if it's going to be this much more competitive, reviewing what search terms you're targeting with AdWords. Are you applying negative keywords to your campaigns and ad groups to make your budget go further by excluding search terms which really aren't relevant? You could be looking at longer tail variations of key terms, which maybe aren't quite as competitive. The next point is to loot potential ideas from your organic keywords, which will be reported using analytics and the Google Search Console hookup that you can put in place. And that will enable you to identify low click-through rate but high engagement search terms sending traffic to your site, which could be then you could target those terms through paid. But also think about intent of the search and behind the search, and try and target your audience earlier on in the user journey, when they're maybe using help and research type search terms. They're going to be less competitive. You could exploit them with surfacing content in your website that answers their questions. And then if they've looked at your blog content, for example, then you can aggressively follow up with remarketing to promote your products and services. Here's an example of what I mean by sort of targeting people earlier on in the decision-making sort of process. So here's a search for Italy holidays. And as you can see, it's pretty competitive. 4 ads in there from major advertisers. We can bet they're bidding quite heavily to appear in there, and just the 2 top organic search results showing here. So this is a classic example of what we're faced with at the moment. But okay, let's just flip that around and say that's Italy holidays. What about a search on Visit Italy? And if you think about it, this is a step back in the process. Google knows it is, and knows if there's a different intent behind this search, because the big thing that jumps out on this search results page is that you're seeing data from a knowledge graph on the right-hand side and on popular destinations. So Google knows here that people are kind of earlier on in their thinking and research, and the search results they're seeing are different to the ones on Italy holidays. But the big thing here is there's no one actually advertising in these search results on Visit Italy. So if you're selling Italian holidays, here's a real opportunity to create some content in your site about why you should visit Italy and why it's so amazing, but actually promote that content using paid search with minimal competition. Get the consumer engaging with your brand earlier on and win their attention and their loyalty before they even then go searching for the more sort of product-specific holiday type searches. So that would be a really good tactic to use to just talk to people earlier on, more upstream in the process. And the last top tactic is all about improving your conversion rate optimization. And again, at Sagittarius, people will know that we're very much focused on not just feeding your conversion funnel by bringing in more traffic to your website, but also improving your conversion funnel and reducing the friction in the process. So we look at things like conversion rate optimization, user experience, making it easier for people to buy from you online or to acquire from you. And that might involve looking at your landing pages and how they perform. Mapping your whole conversion process and finding the moments in that process where people drop out. It could be running A/B testing on different layouts of pages, different content, even button colors and form layouts. And lastly, dynamic call tracking can be a really valuable analytics tool to put in place on your site. If a lot of your inquiries are coming by inbound telephone call, then dynamic call tracking will help you identify which AdWords, ad group, or even keyword it was that actually generated the visit that turned into the phone call. And that again can really help you home in on the best performing content that's going to generate phone calls if that's what matters to you. So those are the top 5 tactics that you can go and implement now, really, in terms of improving your AdWords performance. But it's a little bit radical to say maybe, but there is life outside AdWords. What we're going to do now is look at what I've called the Magnificent 7. And these are my 7 of the best alternative channels to AdWords and the 4-pack. So if you're really up against it, if you can't fight your way back into the 4-pack, if the big costs have just got too much, then here's a, as I say, a set of suggestions of other channels you might want to consider. And the first sort of strategy really is to dominate the search results page, but not through AdWords. So Ordinarily, this would be through organic search, through SEO, and we know that has got more competitive because that whole block of 10 results has been pushed down one. So maybe look around that about knowledge graph. So if someone's doing a brand search, what information are they seeing about your brand? Is it accurate and up to date? How can you get that updated? Often Google will take data from Wikipedia and present it in a knowledge graph, so you can try and influence that. Google Answers could be an interesting way to appear in search results by turning common searches into questions and making sure you've got a piece of content that answers that question. And then over time, Google may pick that up and display it as an answer. The local pack, the map that we saw earlier, obviously really important now to make sure you've got your Google local business listing sorted out and up to date, and maybe some Google reviews on there to give it a boost and to make sure that's appearing. And lastly, really get maximum attention from search results by, again, review stars, another schema markup and other schema tags. So again, feeding through from someone like FIFO if you're working with them, and making sure you're pushing those through into natural search results. My second non-AdWords strategy is still kind of AdWords, but not the normal sort of search campaign. And that would be to go back and utilize product listing ads, Google shopping results. Go back and review them and see, do these have a place for your business? They've historically been just for e-commerce and very product specific. But as I mentioned before, Google is starting to roll them out, and this could be a way you can get into that missing right-hand panel again. For example, hotels can now feed into PLA listings, I believe. It does require some technical support to set up. You need an outbound feed of your sort of a product catalog and inventory. It can be a little bit fiddly setting up the campaigns through what used to be Merchant Center, but it's well worth having a look at. And my third strategy, again, is sort of AdWords related in that it can be run through the AdWords control panel, but is actually to use brand display advertising. So this is good old banner ads. Now, banner ads kind of, sometimes they're misunderstood. Some people think they are there to drive traffic, and they can get some sort of click-through rate, but it'll always be very low. But really, their benefit is to raise brand awareness about your brand around on third-party content. What you can see if you're running brand displays, then an uplift in terms of your organic click-through rate, but also on your paid click-through rate as well. So it can really support other activities. And again, it's if you're stimulating searches on your brand in paid search, they're going to be far less competitive as a search term and a much lower cost per click. The fourth channel is a new AdWords product, really, which is Gmail sponsored promotions. And what this allows you to do is target Gmail users based on who they are receiving emails from and what those emails contain in terms of the keywords in the content. So, for example, this would allow you to compete very well with any other e-commerce brands, for example, to try and gain market share, to win people over to your website if they're already buying from someone else, because you could target people receiving checkout, thank you, confirmation emails from your competitor names. So that could be a very good way to try and grow market share. The other way that you can use it, therefore, is also targeting people in their research phase. So going back to our Italy holidays example, you could use Gmail promotion to target people talking about visiting Italy in their emails, which could be a really good way to get in there earlier and own that conversation with the audience. Number 5, social pay-per-click, something we use a lot of with clients, and I know a lot of people are using more and more. So the main difference here is, rather than relying on a reactive channel like AdWords to respond to people searching for the terms we want to target, with social pay-per-click, we can reach out more proactively and target our audience by their demographics, their interests, or if they're a remarketing audience of people who've engaged with our website in the past. And the most common way of doing that is Facebook ads, using both ads and boosted posts, which we find to be very effective. But it could also be Twitter ads, LinkedIn ads, Pinterest ads as well. So, it might be if AdWords is really getting too competitive, now is the time to review the latest opportunities on social pay-per-click and paid social. Number 6, YouTube ads. So again, it's sort of Google related, but a real untapped opportunity. So YouTube is a really significant size search engine in its own right. It attracts a lot of how-to search activity. And you can use it in different ways. You can target people searching for specific things, just like you do with pay-per-click on YouTube, and get your video to the top of those search results. But you can also target people a bit like you would with social and display, based on their demographics. You can even target them based on if they've been to your website previously and you really want to reinforce your brand story and brand messages by showing them a different piece of video to really reinforce the selling points of your business. Now, a barrier to YouTube has historically been video content. But now video content is getting easier and easier to put together just using off-the-shelf stock footage, for example, and stock soundtracks. You can put something together just as a short video to reinforce brand message quite easily. So I'm going to try and show you an example. Fingers crossed this will work. So I'll show you an example now of a video we've put together to use on YouTube ads. So you can see there, that's just a really quick and easy example of something put together that actually is being rolled out across social sharing, paid social, and YouTube ads. But that was put together using off-the-shelf stock footage. There's absolutely so much available now, and it's a really interesting area to explore that we're doing more and more work on. So lastly, of the Magnificent Seven, last but not least, Bing ads, little old overlooked Bing ads. So they do still exist. Using the Bing ads platform, you can reach users on Bing, MSN, and the Yahoo search network. In the UK, that represents about 10% of the UK search market. But if you're targeting North America, then you would expect to reach a higher proportion of the audience because those search engines are actually used to a greater degree there. If you think about it, those search engines can be used by different demographics. You need to bear that in mind. It might be it's a more appropriate demographic for your audience. But also, just bear in mind, it is a very small volume of traffic that you're going to get. It's not going to replace Google AdWords. But in our experience, we find that the traffic you get from Bing ads converts really well, and you get a really good ROI, return on investment, because it's so cheap. So well worth considering. So to recap what we've run through, and then I'll run through this recap, and then if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type those in the panel and we can run through those if there are any at the end. But to recap here, really you need to, if you're using AdWords, you need to optimize for ad rank and click-through rates. Those are the two key things you really need to focus on. Linked to that, you might want to consider broadening your targeting and looking a little bit further afield in terms of search terms to target. You might want to explore some of those other channels we've highlighted to maybe replace some short-term loss you may be seeing from AdWords, or maybe grow your overall digital marketing activity. And And lastly, think about the user journey and think about using digital marketing and optimizing your marketing at every stage of the user journey, which is a really sound strategy to take anyway, despite the recent changes to AdWords. But by owning the earlier stages of the research phases of the user journey and the awareness raising, you can make life easier for yourself at the later stages when people are making comparisons and doing their more sort of head-to-head comparisons. So there's an opportunity now, if there's any questions, just checking. We don't seem to have had any questions in, which is great because hopefully that means I've answered everything that may have sprung to mind. So what I'm going to do is move on to just finish off on a couple of points. If you do still think of a question, do still type it in though, I can just cover that off at the end. So just to really thank you all for listening in. If you do want to know more about PPC management generally, digital marketing, anything that we've talked about, obviously you can email us at hello@sagittarius.agency, give us a call. If you're an existing client, just speak to your account manager or myself. Very happy to meet people at our offices here in Ashford or our London office at Travel Tech Lab in London Bridge. And also, you know, if you are interested, we are always happy, if you're new to Sagittarius, to carry out some sort of initial review and audit. Lastly, just want to give a bit of a plug for our next event coming up, and this is a physical event, not a webinar. So this is a really exciting next in our series of masterclasses, which I know some of you have been to, and this is on the future of search, so really relevant to what we've talked about today. It's taking place towards the end of July on the 27th. And it's a great venue, the Hospital Club in London. And but this is going to be a brilliant event because we're holding it in partnership with Google. We've got a speaker from Google. We can have a speaker from FIFO come along as well. And obviously a couple of pieces of content from the team here at Sagittarius. And it will be a really good look at sort of what's happening in search now and what's going to be happening in the future, and a bit of crystal ball gazing to see what you need to be thinking about in search results for your future digital marketing. So I'd just like to wrap up now by saying thanks ever so much for listening in. As I say, I hope you found that useful. If it's prompted any questions, please do get in touch. As you can tell, you probably tell we love talking about digital marketing and would love to talk it through with yourselves as well. So thank you for attending and speak to you soon.